Funding for this program is made possible by Burke Nursery and Garden Center in Burke, Virginia. You'll find trees and shrubs, perennials and annuals, water garden supplies, houseplants, and bird and gardening supplies. Burke Nursery also provides landscape, plant diagnostic, and installation services, as well as the October month-long Pumpkin Playground Festival featuring hay rides and much more. For more information, you can check out their website or call 703-323-1188. Welcome to Gardening with Burke Nursery. This is a show where we help grow your garden, improve your lawn, and increase your curb appeal. I'm your host, Misty Kuceris, and the horticulturalist at Burke Nursery and Garden Center. Today, we're going to talk about fall maintenance, and fall garden maintenance to be specific. What's incredible about fall, as we well know, is that the weather starts getting cooler. What happens also is that it's the time period where your plants start seeking more nourishment. It's the time period where the roots start growing better. And it's the time period where also you want to start thinking about putting your garden to rest. So in order to prepare your garden for the winter, and more importantly, fall is actually the time to prepare your garden for the spring, we'll be speaking about improving your soil, plantings for the fall, as well as cleaning your garden, and finally, the most important when you put your garden to bed is cleaning your garden tools. So improving the soil means understanding your soil. Without your soil, your plants can't grow. Without the enrichment, your plants can't thrive. And the best way to understand your soil is to actually do a soil test. This is the way of finding out what your plant looks like, what your garden looks like and what's there. So often I receive emails with questions about gardening or questions about trees, shrubs, or other aspects of taking care of your yard. And one of our customers wrote in, "You're always talking about the importance of testing the soil. So why is the soil test so important, and how often do you do the soil test?" Well, the reason the soil test is important is that the first thing that happens is you want to know what your pH is. And pH tells you whether you have an acidic soil, whether you have a neutral soil, or whether you have an alkaline soil. And so it's on a scale of about 0 to 14, with 7 being neutral. And most states east of the Mississippi tend to have a more acidic soil, where most states west of the Mississippi tend to have a more alkaline. And we call alkaline soil sweet, we call acidic soil sour. And you can take this soil test yourself by going to the store and purchasing any of these soil testing kits. The other thing is that what these testing kits show you is not only the pH, but it also shows you aspects to help you fertilize your soil better. And so the soil kit has a special test for nitrogen, it has a special test for phosphorus, and it has a special test for potash or potash, depending on what part of the country you're from, that will help you really know what type of nutrients your garden needs. And it's a fairly easy test to take. We won't go through the total process here, but basically, the green in this test is your pH. And what you would do is you would take the little capsules out of here, and then you would take some soil from your garden, from the area that you want to test, and you would put the soil in this, then you would put one of the capsules in the tube, then you would put water, distilled water, into the rest of the tube and shake it up. And as a matter of fact, I have a picture of a pH test that I took of my garden, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. The rest of the items, when it comes to the phosphorus, the nitrogen, and the potash portions of the test, are done slightly differently. And basically, you would get soil, put it in a pot, put 5 times the amount of water in that pot, let that pot sit for about 10 minutes, and then put the water in each one of these little tubes after you remove the capsules, then put the tubes in the water, shake them up, let them sit for 10 minutes, and then you'll get the results. And as you can see from the next picture with all the tubes, I have some results, again, of the soil test that I took. And this is important because I have an area in my yard that for the last year I have had trouble growing plants. They seem to get powdery mildew, they get other fungal infections, and I really don't like losing plants, but it just seems like I have crop failure in that portion. So if you take a look at that picture where I have the 4 tubes, and behind the 4 tubes, and when you purchase these soil test kits, you'll see they have actually color indicators here. The first thing that I noticed was that my alkaline, my pH level rather, was way too sweet. And it almost looks from the soil test that it's 8.0. And nothing really likes to grow in soil that's 8.0. Then the next one, the nitrogen, nothing. But nitrogen goes through the soil faster, so I wasn't worried. And then finally, the last 2, the phosphorus and the potash, not enough phosphorus, not enough potash. So I am going to have to make some soil amendments and add sulfur, in this case, to lower the pH, and also add fertilizer before I do any planting. But also because that pH is so high, I'm going to go and also have a soil test done by Virginia Tech. And the Virginia Tech soil test you can pick up at Burke Nursery, you can pick it up at any county library here in Fairfax, or if you live in other parts of Virginia, they also have soil tests. You take the soil, put it in here, send it off to Virginia Tech, and then they send you back a report. And the money that you pay for this soil test with Virginia Tech actually comes back here to Fairfax County, or actually comes back to other counties where we then are able to fund some of our special programs through our cooperative extension agency. And some of those programs are the Master Gardener programs, as well as agricultural programs for adults and children. A great cause. So once you understand, and when you take that soil test from Virginia Tech, what you'll see is that you get a more extensive soil test. And we have one here that you can look at. In this case, this individual's soil pH level was 7.3. So that would be a little on the high side if it were for a garden. This individual actually did his for a lawn, so that wasn't a problem for a lawn. But for a garden, 7.3 is a little too high. But what's also most important is sometimes we tend to over-fertilize. So if you look at his phosphorus levels, which is P, and potash, which is K, they have H minus and H minus, or excuse me, I can't read, M minus there. And that means that there's way, way too much phosphorus in that soil, and the potassium is a little on the high side. So in his case, he might not have to, if this were a garden, he wouldn't have to fertilize. So in my case, my soil test said your plants aren't thriving because the pH isn't right and it needs more fertilizing. If this were a garden with this Virginia Tech test person, then this would indicate, oh, wait a minute, I better not fertilize, otherwise I'll over-fertilize and I'll basically give too much candy to my plants and they won't like it just as much as plants don't like enough fertilizer. So that's why it's very important to improve your soil. I just finished talking about the importance of fertilizing and understanding your soil so that you know what to fertilize and you also know whether or not you need to adjust your pH. The other thing that's very important when you're doing your fall gardening is to actually add various composts. And so the compost that you can use is you can use leaf compost, you can use composted manure, you can use my favorite, which is mushroom compost. You can use straw as well, or you can make your own compost. You just want to mix in about 1 to 2 inches of that compost. And why is it important to constantly add compost? Well, compost brings not only the good nutrients and the microorganisms, but it also brings in trace minerals and trace elements. And unlike fertilizer, compost doesn't overstimulate your lawn. The other thing is I will get questions from people saying, oh, my trees or my shrubs aren't growing. And I ask, well, how long have those trees or those shrubs been there? And they say, well, maybe 15, 20 years. And I ask them, well, how often have you added compost in your garden around your trees and shrubs? And the answer is never. I wish I had a video with me when I went to one person's property because they were complaining about something not growing, and I went and I tried to put a trowel into the soil around the azalea plants. And azaleas have very shallow roots, and that area was as hard as a rock. So my recommendation was to add compost. And you can create your own compost if you want, and you can create your own compost either using leaves and grass clippings. You can create your own compost using twigs and other materials and other matter. And just check with your county, because certain jurisdictions have specific rules about what you can put in a compost pile. So it's very important to know what those rules are. Some areas will let you do what we call a green compost, which are your grass clippings, twigs, trees, leaves. Other areas will not, and other areas will let you do a full compost, which includes food waste like bananas, eggshells, other things, but there are some jurisdictions which won't allow you to use food waste. They'll only allow you to do what I call the green compost. So please check with your jurisdiction before you decide. The other is, I got into a discussion with a friend of mine who is a now retired organic gardener. And she believes and feels that it's very important to put straw as a part of compost in your vegetable gardens, because she was always raised matter to matter or plant to plant, tree to tree. So she feels it's important to put your shredded mulches, hardwood shredded, pine mulches, any of the bark mulches around trees and shrubs. And she feels it's important to put either straw, grass clippings, or leaves around your vegetables. But then she said to me, her husband has this one area where he grows vegetables, and he uses the hardwood shredded mulch in that one area because it's just easier. And with a lot of trees and everything in their area, they just found it easier to have the mulch there. So both of us had a chuckle about that and decided if it works in your garden, then you can use whatever type of mulch works best for you, or rather whatever type of compost you can use that works best for you. So that's how you improve your soil. Now, the next aspect of fall maintenance is plantings. Because the weather cools down, plants don't suffer as much when they're planted. And when you take a plant out of a pot, it always will go through what I call transplant shock, the formal name, or personally what I like to say, it sulks. And so it needs to get used to being planted. It needs to be used to being in the ground. And I have some plants back here. For example, mums are a very popular plant in the fall to plant. And so, but as you can tell, if you take it out, of course this one there, as you can tell, if you take it out of the pot, it has a lot of roots here. So you want to loosen this and put it in the soil, but then it takes a while for that mum to grow. So this time of year, because the plants are preparing for winter, actually what happens is that there's more micronutrients to the surface of the soil, there's more micronutrients that can attach to the roots of the soil. Therefore, your roots get more carbohydrates so that they can go through the winter months. So planting becomes very important. And that planting can be your trees, that planting can be your shrubs, that planting can also be perennials. So I have two perennials here, and this is your coneflower. And I'm going to talk about the coneflower or echinacea in a little bit longer too as part of your fall maintenance. And this here is a coral bell. So any perennials that are planted this time of year, yes, they will die back in a few months, but they'll actually come back in the spring stronger because their roots are getting better nourishment. So don't forget that in the fall, that's a wonderful time to plant your perennials. In addition to planting perennials, I also mentioned that this is a great time to plant your mums. This is a wonderful time to plant your asters. This is a wonderful time to plant your pansies. And what I like about pansies are what I call one plant for basically two plants for the price of one. And what I mean is whether you plant your pansies in the pot or whether you plant them in the ground, they look beautiful in the fall. They look a little strange in the winter, but come spring, they come back, they revive, they shake off their little heads, and they're looking beautiful again until around June or July when the heat of the sun just wilts them totally. This is also, when you're looking at your fall plantings, this is time to plant what I call your spring blooming bulbs. Your daffodils, your tulips, and those you want to plant towards the end of September. You want to plant those in October. If you're looking at edibles, this is the wonderful time to plant garlic. If you plant your garlic now, it'll be ready for consumption at the mid-July, end of July, maybe August. This is a great time to plant your cold crops. And your cold crops are lettuce, kale, and if you want to see an entire list of cold crops, just feel free to email me at misty@burkenursery.com. The other question that I get frequently is, what plants do I divide? And I'm just going to put these two plants aside for right now. There's a general rule of thumb when dividing your plants, which is that if you have plants that bloom in spring to mid-June, then those are actually plants that are good. The spring blooming plants are good to separate in April or May. Your midsummer blooming plants can often be good to separate and divide in now, which is fall. The two that really do need to be divided in fall are your bearded irises and your peonies. And dividing plants is, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get samples of your irises or peonies to bring in to show you right now, but basically what you want to do is take a look at the corms and see where exactly to divide them. So now we've looked at the soil, we've looked at what we can plant, we've looked at what we may need to divide, and so the next thing then is cleaning up. And cleaning up means that if you have any plants that have died back, you want to remove those plants out of the garden. If you have any weeds, you want to weed your garden. You can even put down a pre-emergent if you want, and that would prevent any weed seeds. The one plant you may want to evaluate whether or not you really want to cut it down, or what they call deadhead. And that's back to this coneflower or echinacea. And another plant that you may want to consider not deadheading or cutting down for the winter months is your rudbeckia or your black-eyed Susan. The reason being, and the reason that this is called a coneflower, is that its seed head is in the shape of a cone. And this seed head becomes seed in the winter months that your birds, especially your goldfinches, just love, and it helps them make it through the winter months. The disadvantage of not deadheading is that the seeds will fall into the ground and it will start creating new plants for you. So you may want to deadhead and cut back some of your coneflowers and some of your black-eyed Susans, and then just leave some so that the birds have some food throughout the winter months. It's a great way to keep things natural, and the coneflower is one of our native plants here, so it's a great way to make sure that the wildlife has sustenance throughout the winter months. Then finally, when those temperatures get down to about, those temperatures that I'm talking about are your soil temperatures. When the soil temperatures finally get to around 40 degrees, then that's when you want to make certain that you have your winter mulch. And someone may say, wait a minute, okay, how do I know if my soil temperature is 40 degrees? Well, if it's too warm, you want to wait until it starts chilling to put down the mulch. But you can also go and purchase what we call a soil thermometer. And this soil thermometer is just put into the ground and it'll measure the temperature of the soil. And you can get one of these at any gardening center or any store that sells gardening supplies. A wonderful tool to have. Also, speaking about temperatures, when it starts getting consistently down to 50 degrees at night on a consistent level, 45 degrees at night on a consistent level, then you want to make certain that you bring in any house plants that you had outside. So what type of mulch? Well, the mulch, I have different samples here, and you can go with your traditional hardwood shredded mulch. which is just good for anything. You can go with shredded pine, which is good for acidic. If you're worried about having ants in your garden, you can go for cedar, because cedar will actually control ant populations. There is a lot of different mulch. And then finally, cleaning your garden tools. It's one of the most important things. Didn't want to bring in all my tools, so I just brought in one tool. Rubbing alcohol, a little towel, and that will definitely clean your tools. So all you have to do is just take that, put it on the paper, just wipe it, and you're all set. The other thing to do, especially with shovels, with pruners, with trowels, just canola oil. And rub it, and that will clean your tool as well. Well, I'd like to thank you for being here with me and with Gardening with Burke Nursery, and I hope that you have learned a lot so I can help your garden grow. Thank you.
Funding for this program is made possible by Burke Nursery and Garden Center in Burke, Virginia. You'll find trees and shrubs, perennials and annuals, water garden supplies, houseplants, and bird and gardening supplies. Burke Nursery also provides landscape, plant diagnostic, and installation services, as well as the October month-long Pumpkin Playground Festival featuring hay rides and much more. For more information, you can check out their website or call 703-323-1188.